With all the turmoil and distractions going on the last few years, we've seemed to have forgotten who is in charge. It's the government. The government knows what's best for us. The government who decides where we will live, what we will learn, what cars to drive, what information we'll see, and how to heat our home if we have one. Without the constraints from knowledge placed upon us by government technocracy, we would be forced to understand our world in ways that are just too difficult for many people, and the decisions would be impossible. Since we are reduced to modern caveman and cave person status, our time may be delivered to those primal matters of survival, entertainment and procreation, while our .gov technocrats make the big decisions. Decisions like whether we will take a flu shot or take our chances. Decisions like, will our children be subjects of a medical experiment that might work or not? These are big choices that .gov will make for us regardless of any facts or numbers, and there are many. A former California governor once said, the scariest words ever heard are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Well, are we ever getting helped? Never seen so much help. These last few years have been very helpful. We've seen children being helped into spreading race hatred at school and changing their genders at will. We've seen rioters, arsonists, and cop killers being helped to express themselves. And of course, we have been helped to see that our government is always in the right and can do no wrong. After all, the election machines say it's so. California once said the scariest words ever heard are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. Well, have we ever been helped? I've never seen so much help. These last few years have been very helpful. We've seen children being helped into spreading race hatred at schools and changing their genders at will. We've seen rioters, arsonists, and cop killers being helped to express themselves. And of course, we've been helped to see that our government is always in the right and can do no wrong. After all, the election machines say it's so. Today we have special guest Greg Farnsworth, journalist for the UB Dependent, and from the Quagmire Institute of Liberal Learning, researcher and author Michael Remington Steele, applause, and our host and media mogul, Gary Michaels. Gary, what is our topic today?
Thomas, our topic today is the government too big? Are taxes too high? And what is the right amount of government? Greg Farnsworth, Greg, is government too big?
No, our government is serving a purpose to provide equality to an unjust society. So we need the government to level the playing field so that minorities and people of color who have been oppressed can have an equal playing field. So that's the government's role, to provide that, and we can do that through equity policies and redistribution of wealth. So we need more of that.
Well, I'm not surprised, Greg. Sounds like you want a lot of government. Well, what say you, Thomas? More government?
I don't think so. What would you know? I think we have enough government. For instance, if you look at last summer, we had a summer of riots that went on and on and on. It didn't stop every night. Cities on fire, mostly peaceful burning riots is what they called it. And we had to look at this every night and wonder, is our city next? And we could wonder, where is the government? Is the government helping stop these riots? Well, the fact is the government did nothing. The government stood by while the riots happened. And why were these riots happening? Because the government in charge of these big cities wasn't the conservative governments, it was the other side, and they let their people riot so they could send these frightening images across our airwaves in front of an election to terrify people. Look what's going to happen. The government is not going to help you if these riots happen. That was the message. And so in that case, more and more government wouldn't have helped. More government would have made no difference at all. The riots were completely unopposed by government. And so if nothing else, government did no good in that case, and it chose to do no good.
So, Greg, what do you have to say about that? You seem to have a real different point of view. How do you respond to Thomas here?
Well, the riots were, justified because we have an inequitable society when black men are shot by police for no reason and killed, and so then we have justifiable riots to show, where our anger is, and the cities allowed us to do this because it was the right thing to do. They didn't stop us, so we kept rioting because it was our right to do that. Portland and Chicago and all those mayors allowed it, so we just did what was in our rights. We rioted to show our displeasure.
The right thing, huh, Greg? You think you did the right? Your people
did the right thing. Yeah. That's
interesting.
What we believe. And the virus was a part of nature, an accidental release of virus that came from nature in China, and we tried to contain it to the best of our ability, and we didn't have enough restrictions. If more people worn their masks and got vaccinated earlier, we wouldn't have as many deaths. So we need more government to tell us to mask, to separate, and to vaccinate everyone possible.
On the second point, look at this. We have huge health agencies all across the U.S. The World Health Institute, the Institute of Health. We have Dr. Fauci and thousands of other medical workers in the United States. Their job was to protect us from viruses and infections. They've done nothing. We get 10 flus every single year. And then in 2019, we got this wonderful bat flu from China. Did the government help stop that flu at all? No, nothing. In fact, they walked it across. In fact, Fauci was involved with harvesting the bat flu and experimenting with it with US money in Wuhan. So I think government is not doing a great job at that point.
I'm going to repeat my question, Greg, because I like you.
Thank you.
Do states have the right to close economies, schools, churches, businesses?
Yeah. Oh,
Does
sure.
the federal government make health policy for the states?
Well, what we have is a pandemic, and we have our leading health experts, the CDC, pointing the way. We have this pandemic, and in order to come through it without millions of people dying, it was necessary to have mandates to shut businesses, mask people, social distance, and vaccinate. That's what the CDC and our leaders, Dr. Fauci, and our doctors at the county health have directed us. So we should follow their science, and we have saved lives, millions of lives because of it. It's a necessary evil, but we had to do these shutdowns. We had to vaccinate. We had emergency mandates that had to be implemented.
Final verdict: government or no government?
It's going to be cut back on government. We have too much government, for Pete's sake. Americans are spending $6 trillion a year for government that can't even keep a bat flu out of our country. And when it comes to police protection, that is a function of each state. And yet we have more and more government, people crying for more government. We need to have more government. Well, at the same time, they're calling to defund police. So which one is it? Defund the police and have more government? Are the IRS agents going to stop the rioting? How's this going to work? The problem is when you have more and more government, you have more and more rules, and it ends up completely hamstringing society. Society is what is important, not government. Government is supposed to enhance society. by granting freedom to society to make their own decisions. But now what we're having is so much government that there are no decisions to be made. The government makes all the decisions. The government has decided we got to wear a mask, decided you have to have a shot to work, decided you have to stay home, decided your kids have to stay home, decided your business is going to be closed. All these things are takings. They're takings by the government, and there's no compensation. A couple of checks for $600 or $1,400 is not going to make up for your income for your restaurant, for instance. So in this case, government is obviously controlling everything, and the controls that they do are one size fits all. It doesn't help to have businesses closed down or have schools closed down. Now we've talked about riots and we've talked about COVID, which are two big items, I think, in the last year. COVID's been destroying this nation, and it's merely a flu. And the overreaction of government is probably on purpose so that they can drive fear into the nation and make it more susceptible and more agreeable to enhance government control. So we don't need that. There's enough government already.
Got it, Thomas. You've made a great case, but let's take this a little further. Could states have the right to close economies, schools, churches, and businesses? Should the federal government make health policy for the states? First, it's up to our third guest. What do you say, Mr. Knochenhiemer?
Well, see, we have studies that people have done at universities, and they have researched what kids' curriculum should be taught. And these experts have said that, the critical race theory helps the kids, and that the government knows, we know how to teach the kids better. As one of our government officials recently stated, can't remember whom. One of the liberals said,
in Virginia.
The governor of
Virginia
said, we know better how to teach our kids than the parents.
Yeah, that was.
I agree with him because I'm a liberal. So the parents don't know how to teach their kids. We know better, and we need to help these kids get taught the correct way in the 21st century.
Experts from Yale and Harvard, as our guest has stated, we have experts telling us from Yale and Harvard that this is a terrible country, and we need to have this training to help our students. I think on that matter, I think they just ran out of problems, and so they created a problem so they could bring in this crazy solution and get it funded and hire a bunch of people who took these crazy courses in college and now have nothing to do. So they have to hire them to run these programs, and they got to get it funded. And it's a problem. I think, many parents are against this. And this is a problem with having experts. You have experts in government, experts from Harvard and from Yale, and they're education experts. They've got 10 years of studying education, and they come out and tell us that you need to have boys in skirts and all that's going on right now. Conservatives think that's a little wild. We think that's out of hand. We think that the average parent is probably better suited to decide what is going to be good for their student. A lot of parents are against these new ideas coming out of Yale and Harvard. And the thing again with the government, we have the governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, telling people right out in the open that the government knows better than the parents. And I think there's nothing scarier than the government coming to your door and telling you, we're here to help you. And that's my final word.
Got it, Thomas. You've made a great case, but let's take this a little further. Could states have the right to close economies, schools, churches, and businesses? Should the federal government make health policy for the states?
We should say that the state does have the right, but should they use it? I would say no, they shouldn't use it. And the reason is this: when you look simply at the death rates in California from 2019, how many people died, in 2019 in California from all causes. And then you compare that to 2020 when we had this pandemic that was going to wipe us all out. The thing is, the numbers are the same. The same number of people died each year. The death rate didn't go up. And so, if nothing else, you have to look at that and wonder, well, what kind of pandemic causes no death rate to go up? There's been no change. You know, if you have a real pandemic, you have, oh, we've had a 5% increase in deaths this year. There's been no difference between 2019 and 2020. And I like easy numbers like that because you can't get around it. There's no way around it. So all the work that the state did, they didn't need to do. I think they did it simply to put pressure on the state so they can usher in more control over us. And look what's happening. They're telling landlords they can't raise rates, they can't raise their rents. They're telling tenants they don't have to pay their rents. It's kind of a giveaway to perhaps the lower economic classes, but it's also shutting down all these businesses has hurt the very lower economic earners because they're out of work suddenly, sitting at home, gaining weight and just being unhealthy. So if you look at the death rates, there's just no excuse for what California has done. And that's my final word.
Well, we've done a great job so far with our first two questions. Now I'd like to move to the third question. And that question is, should teachers' unions be political, have political power, control education and curriculum? Greg, what do you say about those 3 points?
Well, I think they definitely need protection because the teachers have a very difficult job and they need direction on how we need direction from the teachers' unions for the teachers how to teach.
So you said they have a very difficult job. Could you elaborate?
Well, they have to deal with 30 kids in a room and they're trying to educate our kids to the highest standards. And it's tough because certain kids don't have an equitable beginning. You know, they go home and not everyone has access to computers. So there's a lot of differences in equity that we have to account for. The students come in, some are privileged and some are not. So we have to fix that. The privileged kids are usually the white kids and they come in with an advantage, and we have to help those who don't have the privilege come to their standard.
You think these teachers' unions have political power, Greg?
Yes, they do. And we need the teachers to have this power so that we can implement the 21st century education, that all kids can have a fair, equitable education and not leave kids behind. And the teachers' unions are helping us do that.
What do you feel about the parents of these students coming to school board meetings and speaking up about the education of their children and the curriculum of the school, particularly critical race theory? Thomas, there's a lot going on there with that issue and the issue about teachers' unions and political power. What do you say about this?
Okay, now the question is, should teachers' unions be political? And maybe it's not the greatest question because it's one of those should things. You know, we think things should be this way or that way. But the problem with teachers' unions is that they get together and they decide which candidates are going to run in their county, in their neighborhood, and they get together statewide and nationwide, and they select presidents, they select governors and senators. There is a great deal of control by the teachers' unions. They control politics. They control who is the president for Pete's sake. And we think that's too much. And, you're talking about too much government. Now we have public employees. These are government employees, these teachers. and they're paid for out of public money taken by taxes, and they're government employees, and yet their unions are deciding who is going to be in charge of how much they get. And they are in charge of the curriculum. The teachers' unions work through their minions to decide, along with their political parties that they are enhanced by and that they support. They decide that we need critical race theory in schools because God knows why, but they're saying there's a whole lot of racism going on. And so I think when we get back to that, the point is the teachers' unions have too much power. Why are there even unions? I mean, they don't get fired. Nobody's ever fired a teacher. You can light your school on fire and still have a job. So what do these unions do? Do they collect money to help the students? No. Do they collect money to help the schools? No. The teachers' unions collect money to give to political campaigns so that political leaders get in who will support the teachers and their beliefs. And those beliefs are critical race theory, bring in the kids, separate them by race. It's a terrible thing. It's in high gear right now. This is a thing that everybody's noticing. They don't want this. This is what the parents are upset about. They've been watching some of their classes because of the pandemic, and they're seeing this race training going on in their school. They go, what the hell is this? So it's like the silver lining to this stupid pandemic.